Hi everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Ciara and I'm the Digital Events Manager at Connecting Up and TechSoup New Zealand. Connecting Up and TechSoup New Zealand are part of the Info Exchange Group, a not-for-profit social enterprise that tackles the biggest social challenges to the smart and creative use of technology. For those of you who haven't attended a webinar session with us before, Connecting Up and TechSoup facilitate an annual training calendar of online webinars, workshops, boot camps and webcons to help the social sector upskill in all things digital. Check out our training and education menu on our website for more upcoming events. But enough about that. I'm excited to welcome you today to the end of financial year hacks using MYOB with Yvonne Varela from Gillespie Advisory. Yvonne is a chartered accountant and registered tax agent with over 20 years hands-on experience in accounting, taxation, auditing, and the financial systems that support them. Yvonne is the principal of the Technology and Knowledge Division of Gillespie Advisory. Her division focuses on providing individuals, small and medium businesses, not-for-profits, and industry associations consulting and training services. Yvonne is a MYOB Business Certified Consultant that provides training in the product as well as systems integrations for some of the popular add-ons that businesses like to use. Her aim is to streamline workflows to ensure organizations can get on with what they do best. While Gillespie Advisory's head office is based in ACT, Yvonne often assists organizations that work outside of the area, including regional and rural areas via online connections. Some housekeeping first. All your lines are muted. So if you have any technical issues, please type it in the questions box in the webinar panel and I'll be able to assist you. If you have any questions during the session, please also type this in the questions box and Yvonne will answer them during the session when possible or at the end of the webinar. We really encourage you to ask as many questions as you think throughout the session to make it as dynamic and interactive as possible. No question is too silly, but also note your comments and questions will not appear to the entire group. If you're on a Wi-Fi connection and have multiple programs open, this can sometimes affect the quality of the audio and video of the webinar. If possible, please close all other programs to help you have the best experience. Note that this webinar is also being recorded and a link to the recording and the slides will be sent to you as soon as we can after this webinar ends. Before we start, I'd also like to remind you that there's a short survey at the end of the webinar, and if you could take the time to complete this, we'd really appreciate it. Thanks for attending today. I'll hand you over to Yvonne.
Well, thank you very much and welcome to the session for today. We're going to focus on some end of year hacks for MYOB and hopefully this helps to streamline the processes that you have at your organisation. Hopefully everyone can see my screen. It's just started up with a slide about our name. Let me know if you can't see that before we proceed. So if everything's going good, Sienna, I might proceed with the next slide. Is that all right? We're not getting any feedback that we can't see what I've got showing up?
Oh, yep, all good to go.
Perfect. Okay. All right. So today we're going to go through 5 key areas that hopefully get you up and running for the end of year financial year and also for your payroll finalisation using the MYOB product. We'll get stuck straight into it. And the number one thing is, and you probably know this already, preparation is key to your success. With anything, we need to have some checks and checklists prepared, and these might already be in preparation for you when you came on and stepped into your role, or it might be something that you haven't yet created in your organisation and that you need to create these. They normally will include things such as making sure that you have recorded all your transactions for the financial year. That means there's no paper sitting on any trays in your desk. Sometimes we get the information coming through not via email from suppliers, but as paper in the mail, and they sometimes slip through the cracks and sit in someone's in tray. Making sure that we've recorded all these are very important, and that should be number one on your priority of checklist items to go through. We also need to revise and record any movements in accounts pertaining to accruals or prepayments. For those guys that have unspent funds or grants, you'll also need to make sure that you've got some adjustments in there for those amounts as well, and any receipts in advance, such as pledges and things like that. they also need to be prepared. Your auditors at the end of the year, if you are lucky enough to go through an audit, will also be asking for unspent funds schedules and what has and hasn't been determined to be income that has been received or funds that have been received in advance. The next item that you normally go through as part of your end of financial year is to review your assets and the fixed asset register, making sure that all those assets that you've purchased during the year have made it to the fixed asset register and have been recorded inside your MYOB in the relevant asset accounts have been completed. And the same goes with any of those items that you've disposed of during the year. So those items that got broken through the year and that you've disposed of them, or perhaps you've upgraded them and you've handed them back over to the IT provider for disposal, they also need to be recorded in both your MYOB and your fixed asset register. And finally, running that depreciation expense calculation and making sure that's recorded inside your MYOB accounts. The next item that we normally look through is to make sure that all your bank accounts, any loans, and all those credit cards have been reconciled. That means credit cards, I know this is the bane of the existence of most people in finance, trying to get that information from the credit card holders. You might have several credit cards going around and you might have a couple of people that are a little bit tardy in their timing in giving the receipts that go with the items that were charged on the credit cards. You really need to be on top of it, especially at financial year end. If you are being audited, that also needs to be tied up before your auditors walk in the door. So all those credit cards, all the bank accounts, all the loans, all the term deposits, they all need to be reconciled, transactions fully entered, and making sure you've gone through the reconciliation process. This is a sneaky one, bad debts and doubtful debts. We tend to forget about these. During the year, you may have been chasing up pledges, you may have been chasing up people who have bought particular services from you if you're the type of not-for-profit that also has commercial activities as well as your donation activities. And people have interacted with you, you've raised an invoice, you've sent it out, and they still haven't paid. You've chased them and chased them. Perhaps you've even gone down the path of sending it off to a debt collector, and still you haven't heard back from them. You need to write those debts, those actions off. They are normally called a bad debt, and they need to be put in through into the system. Doubtful debts on the other side is where we're not ready to write them off. They haven't gone bad yet. We think we might be able to get the funds out of them. Perhaps it's a donation pledge. Perhaps they are pledging to give it at a particular point in time. Maybe it is on the 30th of June that they pledge to give the funds. Normally you'll be able to have a percentage or a calculation or a gut feeling sometimes of what is kind of a doubtful, kind of going to happen, and normally we make a provision for that. It's called a doubtful debt. We can also adjust those later on if they do end up not coming through by pushing them through as a bad debt. Now, if you are the type of organisation that also runs some inventory or some stock, perhaps you've got a shop front that sells bric-a-bracs, secondhand clothing, books, toys, perhaps even your own merchandise for your organisation, you may be conducting inventory activities. MYOB has a cool feature within it that allows you to track your inventory items, and as part of that process, you will be able to do a stock take and enter any missing items during that process. It is important in this case, if you do have the auditors coming to you, that process is also completed. Now, I know we said reconcile those bank accounts. Following off from that is also reconciling all the other items that are on the balance sheet. They might be some suspense accounts that you've created. It might be your PAYG withholdings. It might be your superannuation liability accounts. It might even be any fringe benefit liabilities accounts. salary sacrifice accounts, all those other accounts that sit in the balance sheet where we're holding funds for a particular reason before we pass them on, or perhaps you're waiting for them to be provided to you. Every account on your balance sheet needs to be verified, it needs to be accountable, and you need to be able to, almost pretty much the cent, be able to say what that balance represents and to be able to provide the evidence that goes along with it. And that goes without saying, even if you are getting audited or not, it's good practices for closing the books at the end of the year to make sure that every balance sheet item can be verified. The next step is also to finalise our STP process. There is a particular step that you're to follow with STP finalisation. It normally goes through checking particular accounts and making sure they agree to other areas. We'll go through that in a moment, but you do need to finalise your STP process as part of the end of year financial year close off. Finally, once all that's been created, you will probably have to put together an auditor's file if you are audited. This normally sits separately. Your auditor might also have a portal that you have to upload particular information to them. That can include things such as minutes of meetings, any budgets that were created during the year, any reporting that goes against those budgets, and the like. There'll also be some management representation reports and also bank confirmations that need to be signed off. Now, they may be required to be uploaded into their portal. It might be through the email exchange, or it might be that the auditor requests for you to give them access to your MYOB file, and they can go in and get particular items out of your MYOB file that they need. It all depends on the engagement that you have with your auditor. It's probably also a good thing to note as well that if you have your auditor engage with you regularly during the year, they should be able to provide you this information in advance. I know it's the month of June. Most auditors get around and talk to people or pre-prepare people in the months of April and May. If your auditor hasn't contacted you yet, it's probably best for you to make contact with them and ask them about that preparation. What do they need? Who needs access to what files? Any information that needs to be signed off? Does the board members have to provide any sort of sign-offs or reports and the like? That way you can get your auditor's file together. And I know it's not part of the end of year process per se. This is more of a wrap-up thing that happens after the end of financial year, as well as after your audit. It's to prepare or pre-prepare those post-audit acquittals or funding reports that you might have to lodge with your funding providers, and also any reporting that you might need to do towards the ACNC. So that's your AIS statements that are usually done at the completion of your audit, and normally you'll go to your AGM, the financials will be presented and passed, and then normally on the back of that, the reporting party for the ACNC will then upload that information to make sure that we've got that process also bedded down, packed. It's kind of the post preparation, but it is something that we need to remember to do, because that is also our wrap-up phase. Now, before we jump into the next segment, which goes through some features that allow for some quality data, do we have any questions about that preparation phase having come through? Because there's a lot of, I know it's just a global sort of glance over, but there is a lot of little steps that go in between each one. But have we got any questions, maybe first-time users, first-time people that are preparing the end of financial year?
Yes, we just have a quick one here, Yvonne. Lucy wants to know, what is STP?
Oh, STP, single touch payroll. It sounds like a disease, STP. It's not, it's single touch payroll. So we'll touch on that a little bit later on when we go through our finalisation process. But STP is basically the way that you interact, or your organisation interacts with the ATO in regards to the payroll. basically every time you run a payroll for your organisation, you need to, on payday, not only raise the pay slip and give it to your employees and ultimately follow through with the payment of their wages, but you also need to electronically submit that information to the ATO. And there's some particular processes that you need to follow if you're not on STP. We'll go through that in a moment when we get to that section, but that's what it is, STP.
Yeah, I don't think we have any other questions at this stage.
We use a lot of acronyms in the accounting and the finance world. It probably makes people's heads spin at this point in time. So if I'm not clear with any of those acronyms that we use, please shout out and I can explain them a little bit in more detail. All right, so let's jump into our next section, which is our features that are built with inside MYOB to allow for some quality data and getting ready for our auditor if we're lucky enough to be going through the audit phase. The first one is it's a really simple one, and it's a really good one to allow us to sort of use it as a wrapping up sort of phase as part of our processing and getting ready for the end of financial year. And that's using the company data auditor that comes within MYOB. It has a couple of steps. It's got about 4 steps, and each one has some sort of sub-steps that you can do within it. And if you haven't used this feature before, it is located on your accounts command center, and then you'll see company data auditor as one of the options. Now, basically, it goes through checking some basic information about your data file, which for some people is a bit of an eye-opener. It normally goes through things like the last time you did a backup, what financial year that your data currently is in. Some people don't have that role, haven't closed off last year's and rolled into the next year. So you might be having some issues when you're trying to run reports, and it's always pre-loading dates for last financial year. This is the reason why you're in the wrong financial year, essentially. But in this screen, you'll be able to see that. It also allows you to see if you've locked periods, which is a really good tip if you're not using that currently. It's at the end of a milestone. Maybe you've lodged a BAS. Maybe you've got to the end of a particular reporting period for the board or management reporting, and you like to lock that data away so you don't make accidental mistakes. You can see if there's a locked period on there. Also, the next steps go through account reconciliations. I know we talked about that before in our preparation phase, but this sort of cements that process where the company data auditor goes through the major accounts. It goes through all your bank accounts, all your loans, as you can see. If you've got petty cash, for example, if you've got the cash till, undeposited funds, perhaps you've got an electronic clearing account, if you've got that connected to some intermediaries like a Stripe or a Tyro. And it also goes through the clearing accounts for PAYG. It also goes and reviews other transactions such as reconciling all your exception reports and things like that. And it also double checks your GST and gives you a bit of an exception report on that, as well as an audit trail to follow through with as well. It's a good little way to use that as your step-by-step process as part of a sub-feature, I guess, if you want to call it as that, as part of your preparation for your end of financial year. Another good feature within MYOB, as mentioned before, is if you're using inventory, when you're tracking your inventory or tracking your stock, you can use the feature within MYOB to make those adjustments in the software automatically for you. So you don't have to sit there and wonder, how do I do a movement general journal? What's a debit? What's a credit? Where do I put this item on this number to? The feature within the inventory count sheet, which is located, if you haven't used it before, under your inventory command center, and then you'll click the count inventory button, and that will bring up this count inventory window. What it basically allows you to do is to see how much is on hand for each of your items that you've got in stock. And the count column is basically you going and doing a stock take, counting how many items on the shelf, so to speak, whether it's the books, the clothing, the merchandise that you've got, whatever it is that you consider to be your inventory, you'll do a count of a per item, and it's as simple as typing in the number that you've counted in the counted column, and then MYOB automatically calculates the difference for you. Once you do that, you'll hit adjust inventory. It will then ask you where do you want the adjustment to go to. Normally there's a inventory adjustments account that sits in your profit and loss, and it will then raise that journal entry correctly for you. It will place the debits and the credits for dollar value worth of those items in MYOB for you, and all you need to do is record that transaction. So it's nice and easy, very simple. The other item, I know it's not a feature per se, but it is a way of using it as a feature in order to make sure that the right people have access to your data, especially at financial year end. Your auditors or your accountants, if you've got an external accountant that's helping you prepare the end of financial year reports, may need access to your MYOB data file. And this can be done in a number of ways. One is to give them access either as a new user or as a new advisor. It might be that they are repetitive, they were in the file last year and they need to be reactivated as a user in order to be able to jump back in and help you to do that finalisation or that audit process. Now that's normally located in the setup menu, and then you'll go and you'll choose user access, and it will bring up the user access dialog box that you see on my screen at the moment. You also get to manage their role. So if this is a new user that you're giving access to, you can create the user type or give them access to an existing user role, or you can create your own user role. Some people like to create their own, give an auditor specific access or give an accountant specific access that's separate to the preloaded roles that comes with MYOB, and that's simply done by clicking on Manage Roles, select the role that you would like to duplicate, and then right-clicking on that and clicking the Duplicate Role button, and then going through the actions of selecting or deselecting the items that that role will have access to. And you can also choose whether it's a read and write access or if it's a read-only access. Also to remember at the end of this process, whoever it is that's having access to your data file, if their access is only for this end of our financial year process, or once their actions are completed in helping you to finalise your accounts or to do your auditing, is to remember to go in here and to inactivate that user. If they don't need to be in the file for the rest of the year, they don't need to have access to it. Privacy is of top concern when we're using our cloud accounting software, and if someone doesn't need to be in the file, we need to unactivate their access. The next feature that you can use in MYOB to help you along the way is to track your end of year entries. Now, this is a quiet and sneaky one that people kind of forget. Even if you've been using MYOB for quite a number of years, this one kind of slips underneath the radar. When you're recording journal entries, you have the ability to select the option up at the top right-hand corner of your journal entries, which is basically a tick box that says this journal is an end of year adjustment. Now, this is great for those people who perhaps traditionally use a 13-period reporting and like to have all those end-of-year adjustments flagged so that when they're running reports later on, they'll be able to filter on what was the core entries during the year. And I want to be able to separate and look separately what are those end-of-year entries that I had created that was specific at this point in time. It's also great for flagging entries that your accountant has helped you put in at this time of year, or if your auditors have come back and said, look, we need you to post some adjustments. It's come out of the audit process, and you need to flag that in your MYOB to understand that this is an adjustment that was done not by you, but by your auditor, or that was recommended by your auditor. In order to access this feature, normally you go through to your accounts command center and you'll click record journal as per normal, and then you'll select that end of year option up at the top right hand corner. Okay, before we jump into STP, I'm going to stop right there. Is that ringing any bells for anyone? Any of those features that people have been using, and questions coming through on that?
I'll just give someone a few seconds to type any questions.
Give them a bit of time to type in. Make English with what they're typing. I know it's a bit of pressure when you're trying to listen and trying to type at the same time, but hopefully those areas are maybe not new to those people that have been using MYOB for a while, but also helps for any new users. Trying to cement some of those little features that come built in with MYOB, so you don't have to pay extra for these features. They come with your product.
Just have one question from Suzanne. What is ATO?
What is ATO? Is that the question? Yeah,
yes.
ATO is it's short for Australian Taxation Office. That's our tax office basically. So hopefully that helps.
That is it.
That is it? Okay.
Yep, she's from New Zealand. Sorry, that's what she said. She's from New Zealand.
Oh, okay. Yes. Okay. Oh, hello there then, for our New Zealand friends. Hopefully you get some tips and tricks out of MYOB, because your MYOB will sort of function as well in a similar manner as to what it does over here in Australia. The terminology that you guys use over there might be a little bit different, but hopefully it's all smooth and easy to sort of translate into our terminology and your terminology. All right, let's jump into STP phase 2. So single touch payroll. Before I jump into the actual reporting and how we finalize our STP, the first big question I need to ask is, are you STP phase 2 compliant? STP has been around for a few years now, and it was released in 2 phases. Phase 1 has been completed, and that primarily focused on getting organisations to start reporting to the ATO their payroll information, not by paper, but via electronic means, straight from your payroll enabled software. So in this case, MYOB comes with payroll as a feature within it, and you will probably be using it to run your payroll. And part of that STP phase 1 process is to make sure that employee details were correct, that tax file numbers were not missing, things like that were in, and making sure that no payroll has been conducted outside of the payroll system within MYOB, and then making that connection between your MYOB system and the ATO in order to receive electronically your information on paid day. STP phase 2 has since come along, and that ends up taking STP phase 1 to a little bit more detail. So phase 2 basically looks at the granular details of what someone is being paid and breaking it up into its componentry. Previously under payroll, we used to sort of dump everything in gross earnings, and because government departments are now starting to share information with each other, such as Centrelink, for example, for income test means and the like, they draw on the information direct from the ATO. And STP phase 2 was introduced in order to allow the government departments, in order to be able to source various bits of information from your payroll that they can then use to do their various activities. So instead of sort of lumping everything in gross earnings, we now have to deaggregate the information, and that means uncoupling things from the gross and giving more information. So it can be things like separating your ordinary earnings, or your ordinary times earnings that you are earning on your core hours that you work, any overtime that you are being paid, if you're getting any shift allowances, if you're getting other allowances like motor vehicle or telephone allowances, travel allowances, any tools of trade, and also splitting up any information that regards to salary sacrificing. So you might be salary sacrificing superannuation, for example. All that sort of information now has to be uncoupled from the way that we used to do it and be giving its own place in order to be reported correctly, one to the ATO, and then for the data sharing that goes across the agencies. I believe New Zealand has something very similar to our STP, our single touch payroll. So this information shouldn't be too dissimilar over there. They have a different phasing system. I'm not sure where they're up to with theirs. Or I think they were actually ahead of us, and I think Australia was actually looking to you guys to see how you're running that. And making sure that we are learning from anything that you guys have gone through. But here in Australia, STP Phase 2 for MYOB users, that should be already embedded and in place in your organisation. MYOB had a deferral in place with the ATO that expired on the 1st of January this year. And that was to allow MYOB to get the back end of their systems correct and compliant and ready to go. It has now been completed, and if you've tried to go and lodge an STP payroll event, you may have got a rejection in the meantime if you haven't completed the Phase 2 steps. If you need to double check whether or not you are Phase 2 compliant, that's easily done by going into the Payroll Centre under Payroll and then clicking Payroll Reporting, and then double checking on the top right hand corner the reporting status. It should say STP Phase 2. If it doesn't say this, you're more likely than not to be still in Phase 1. You'll end up needing to go through the STP Phase 2 compliance process that comes within your payroll reporting screen, and it will get you ready to be compliant with Phase 2. Once you are compliant, it should then flick over through to say that you are reporting on STP Phase 2. Okay, knowing that we are enrolled in STP Phase 2 and that we're happy and everything's running smoothly, the next step is to start our finalisation process. Now, the finalisation process has replaced in the old terminology those group certificates or those PAYG summary statements that you may have in the past heard about, or the words bandied around. We don't any longer provide physical printouts of those information. It's all done via electronic means. It's straight from your MYOB data, straight to the ATO, and then it flows through into the employee's MyGov account and through to the tax agent portal if that employee is using a tax agent. Okay, step 1 is make sure that all our pays are entered into MYOB up to 30 June. Now, watch out for the payment date. When you're creating a pay slip, you will have a start and end date for the period in which a person is being paid, and then there'll be another date, and that relates to the physical date that they're going to get paid. That payment date determines which financial year that pay is going to sit in. So if your pays are going to be, your payroll ends, your end date for the pay week ends on, say, the 28th of June, but you're not physically paying someone until the 29th, 30th, or even the 1st of July, you'll have to double check those dates that you're entering in as the payment date. Normally that's the number one area that we see issues, and it's to do with the payment date. That it will also then feed into your superannuation obligations, because super is payable, or the period that you need to pay your superannuation is determined by that payment date on that pay run. So just double check your dates. Next, and importantly, find and fix any incorrect pays that have been processed during the year. I know that I've had multiple talks with the ATO, especially in the STP compliance area, and this is the #1 area that they see coming through, where there's perhaps a changeover event or something that's happened during the year, and we've kind of just parked information in the payroll system for a bit until we get clarity, and we've never had enough time to go back and fix that up. Now is the time to fix any incorrect pays and making sure that the numbers that are going to flow through on our end of financial year information on our STP finalisation is correct, and that includes the classifications, those allowances, the gross information, anything that's broken down is correctly reported. And that also includes a recording of any amounts that have gone through on annual leave or entitlements like that, and they haven't been put straight to gross, that we've also gone through and made sure that they're categorised correctly. Once we've done that, we also need to double check that our terminated employees have been terminated correctly. In order to do this, you normally see that under your payrolls, or sorry, your card section in your MYOB, you go to your cards list section, and one of those will be your employees. If they are a current employee, they should be popping up unless you have ticked the show inactive button. But if an employee is no longer working with you and has been terminated, but they're still showing up as a current employee in that card section, you will need to go through and terminate them or inform the ATO that that employee has been terminated. Now, the simple steps in order to do that is you'll need to go through to your payroll command center. You'll then end up going through your payroll reporting and then selecting the option that refers to finalising an employee. And then you'll be able to flag that employee's termination date as well as the reason why they have been terminated. Now, in the past, we used to use separation certificates where we used to have to handwrite them out and then send them off to Centrelink, for example. That provides a reason why that person's been terminated. It might be that there's a voluntary cessation. It might be the unfortunate situation where they've passed away. It might be that the organisation has terminated them on other grounds. Maybe they've been stood down for whatever reason or been provided a redundancy. This information is important, one, because it finalises that employee's employment with you. It also sends electronically to places like Centrelink that information, so you don't need to fill in that separation certificate. And it also allows that employee or that ex-employee, if they need to apply for any Centrelink benefits, for example, to be able to have that transition into that process as a smooth transition. Once that information is entered into the employee termination section within the single touch payroll reporting window, you can hit file, and that goes off to the ATO and to the various departments electronically. The next thing that we end up needing to do basically relates to running some key reporting and matching them back up to what's been reported in our payroll reporting centre. So our favourite reports that we like to use are the year-to-date verification reports and also our payroll summary reports. Now, the purpose of this is to make sure that those details that we have in the reportings in our MYOB matches to the information that we've provided to the ATO via the single touch reporting centre. Sometimes they don't go correctly. One is not in line with the other. That normally indicates that there's been a pay run that has been created and you've paid your employees, but you haven't lodged that information with the ATO. What you might need to do is go in and lodge that information with the ATO in that single touch payroll reporting centre and then double check by rerunning those reports again and making sure the values that you see in those reports match back up to the single touch payroll reporting centre. Once you've verified all that information is correct and you've gone through all the checks and balances, you'll need to then go through and do the finalisation process. That's as simple as going through into your MYOB, selecting your payroll command center, hitting your payroll reporting, and then once that opens up, you'll go to the third tab, which is called Enter Financial Year Finalisation, EOFY finalisation. You'll double check that the payroll year on your left-hand corner is the current year that you are going to finalise. It sometimes pre-populates with today's payroll year. So if you're running this on 1st of July, 2nd of July, just double check that may pre-populate to the 2024 financial year. You can use the up and down arrows in order to switch it back to the 2023 financial year. And you can also export this information by selecting all the employees and exporting to Excel if you need to. But once you're happy with them, it's a matter of selecting either one by one employee or all of them in one go, and then hitting that finalise and notify the ATO button. If you do have anyone, however, that is needing to have a reportable fringe benefit amount placed on their finalisation report, you'll need to select in the first place that top right-hand corner button that's called Enable Report FBA, reportable fringe benefit amounts. That'll open up the column that allows you then to type in that dollar value. That normally would be done by perhaps the external accountant if they're preparing your FBT return, or perhaps you're doing that in-house by one of your senior finance personnel. You'll type that in. Once you're happy with that, you'll hit the finalise and notify the ATO, and it will go off into the ATO system. Now, I know that there's a quick overview of the STP finalisation process. Has anyone got any questions in relation to that at all? It's a bit of a process. It's a bit cumbersome. There's a lot of steps that fall within each one, and this is normally where we get a lot of our questions coming through.
Louise had a question.
Yes.
Ori, entering pays up to the 30th of June. If the pay period ends, say, the 4th of July, do we need to do 2 pay runs, i.e. one on the 1st to the 30th and one to the 4th of July?
No. So the normal process is to continue to process your pays as per normal. So if your payroll period finishes on the 4th of July and you physically pay your employees, say on the 5th of July, you will follow your normal process. What it might mean is, as part of your end of financial year preparation process, where we talked about accruals, is you may need to make an accrual in your accounts, a general journal entry that says the pay period between so up until the 30th of June, there is an accrued expense of expected wages. That might be 4 days, 3 days, 5 days, depending what cycle you're on, if you're on weekly, fortnightly or monthly, but you'll make that accrual up until the 30th of June, and that's how you capture that information into the system for up to 30 June. You don't need to run 2 separate pay slip transactions where you're running a pay up to bang on 30 June and then another one that does from 1st of July to the 4th of July. So hopefully that makes sense, unless I've got the payroll system open in front of me in order to show people that I know that the dates bamboozle people a little bit because it is a very important date and people kind of it is the number one place that we normally see people come up with questions.
Okay, we've got another question from Dawn, and she just wants to know the first report that you mentioned. What was it called? Was it year to date?
Yeah, it was called a year to date. Let me just grab that report name. It's called a year to date verification report, and that's normally run over into run out of our payroll center. And normally we take that one, and then we also do our payroll summary report. And our payroll summary report, if you go into your reporting center, you'll be able to grab that if you filter through to the reporting section for your payroll.
Okay, question from Steph. In regards to salary sacrifice, FPT and STP finalisation, are these for the amounts until 31st of March?
Sorry, are they up to, what was it for the 31st of March?
You know, I think what you mean is, you know, in salary sacrifice, it kind of ends on the 31st of March. So she's wondering, are these amounts for up until the 31st of March?
Yes and no. Okay, so salary sacrifice will happen for the full year. If you have employees, because you're not for profit and you're allowed to go up to the $30,000 threshold for expense benefits, as well as probably the top up for the meal entertainment amount, what you'll normally have is the FBT year end will end at the 31st of March, and then there will be a process where your accountant or your in-house accountant will be preparing the FBT return. That's the amounts that we need to double check whether or not they are reportable as a fringe benefit, and that's the amounts that will end up needing to place, if there is a reportable fringe benefit amount, on the finalisation of the pays in the finalisation section in our STP, and that's separate to salary sacrifice, because you can have multiple salary sacrifices going at the same time. We've got quite often people that are salary sacrificing expense benefits, and that will fall part of that 31 March information. And then we've got other people that do sort of top ups for their super because they want to sacrifice some of their main wage into super. Usually we find that with people that are closer to retirement. That information doesn't go on that reportable fringe benefit amount. That sort of sits outside. That in itself is a bit of a process, and normally your accountant will help you if you're navigating that sort of sphere. But hopefully that helps to understand that process, because there's sort of two sections within salary sacrifice. It depends what we're salary sacrificing.
Okay, Shelley has a question. How do we remove an employee that has been terminated in a prior year and they are still showing up but with a zero value?
Yes. Okay, that's because the finalisation process for a terminated employee hasn't been fully done. So what I need you to do is then go into your payroll and then go into your reporting. Your payroll reporting sector, and then you probably still see on my screen that single touch payroll reporting window. The second tab along the top is employee termination. You'll need to go into there. You'll most likely find that employee that has been terminated in the prior financial year is still showing up there as a valid employee. You'll need to select that employee, and then you will run through the finalisation or the termination process by saying this person's been terminated. It'll ask you for some basic details, the date that they were terminated, their last day at work, and it'll also ask you the reason for their termination. Once you've done that, it should allow you then to lodge with the ATO the termination details of the employee, and it should remove them out of the system and you shouldn't see them anymore.
Okay, Teresa, are there significant changes in STP finalisation from last year's process, or are they pretty much the same?
Most of it's going to be pretty much the same. The windows are all going to look the same. The process of checking all that preparations process is still going to be the same. The only thing that's different is for those people who have yet to join STP Phase 2, there may be some background work that they need to go through, such as allocating the pay categories to particular STP Phase 2 reporting categories, and going through and updating that information. That process is different. The rest of it, once that process is completed and you're in the reporting for STP Phase 2, the rest of it is pretty much business as usual.
Yep, that's it for
Okay.
now.
Okay, all right. Let's keep going because we're running out of time. We've got still so much to go because our MYOB is jam-packed with all these features. Okay, our next section is going to be going through that formidable online versus browser war that seems to still be popping up. So as you might be aware, if you're using the AccountRight product, either as the Plus or the Premier, you will still have that desktop icon that you can launch the product. And as long as your file is online, that means down the bottom, the bar that you're seeing across the screen is green, and on your right-hand bottom corner, you're going to see that it's online. And you'll also have at the top in your command center a button that says to be able to launch in the browser. AccountRight online products are still going to be worth you keeping and using in particular situations. However, MYOB is transitioning over into the browser. It's trying to modernize its system, and it's doing that in a staged process. And we've got our browser products at the moment, which relate to our Business Lite, Business Pro, and our payroll only. But you can use your AccountRight product in the browser as well if you need to. By using it in the browser, it means that you can use it on any device. It's not limited whether you're using a PC version or a Mac version, whether you're running things on tablets, whether you're running things on smartphones, and it also allows you, when you're using MYOB in the browser, to have that ability to access your data anywhere, anytime, and you're not tied to that desk at the office. So let's go through some features that are only available in the browser. And as things keep moving along with the browser versus online wars, the browser will be beefed up. But please be assured it may look different, but it's the same data. It's just presented differently. And that's because obviously we're trying to present it in the browser, in the web browser. The great thing about being in the browser is that you have automatic ABN validation. So when you are entering details for a new supplier or a new customer, the browser will automatically check whether or not the ABN that you've provided in that contact's details is a valid ABN and is also registered for GST, and that's done automatically. The program will also notify you or alert you if the number is invalid or if there's any missing ABNs, so that you can then make appropriate actions or steps. Bank reconciliations and its matching power in the browser, it's much more powerful. It also couples in with another feature that we're going to see later on, which ties into bulk transactions. Bank reconciliation allows us to be able to match easier and to be also able to create transactions on the fly if we don't have a preloaded sales or preloaded purchase invoice in the system. If we have bank accounts that are not available to have bank feeds turned on because the feature doesn't exist with that particular bank account, and you're having to use the import-export features in order to get those transactions in, the bank reconciliation features in the browser allows you to do bulk entries in order to make those transactions be recorded in your system in one big go rather than going line by line. And then that's a very powerful feature that's not available in the AccountRight online version. Find and replace. This is a groundbreaking thing. It's only available in the browser, and while MYOB was slow to pick this up compared to its competitors, this is groundbreaking. It's really great for those people who are doing a review process, say at the end of a BAS period, and we're checking our GST transactions, GST that's been on transactions. If you're not for profit and you do access the special GST rules for you for running particular events during the year, and you are able to not not report GST on the income that you've received on those activities, you may go through the GST reporting checking phase, checkpoints that you've got, and realise that you need to do a bulk change in your GST on these transactions, rather than going line by line, which could be several lines, several invoices. With our larger organisations, it's hundreds of invoices that pertain to this. You can use the find and replace feature to do it in a couple of clicks. It is a time saver. It is amazing. The next item is using that in-tray in the browser is much more easier. The in-tray allows you to send information into MYOB that pertains to the image of an invoice from your supplier, for example, and to attach it to the actual transaction itself. In the in-tray, you're able to see what that invoice is and use the split view on the same page. That way you've got the invoice in front of you and you can do your data entry. And this is vastly different to the experience of the in-tray that is in the AccountRight product, where you just get the little paper clip and you've got to have multiple windows open on multiple screens in order to get to the same activity. The other big powerful thing is consolidated financial reports. And this is great for those entities that are running multiple businesses using MYOB, and you need to do consolidated reports at the end of the year. If you are, however, using, you do need to, the proviso on this is that all entities need to be using MYOB in order to have them connected and to be able to create the consolidated financial reports. If there is an entity that is not using MYOB, you cannot connect that into the browser, and you will end up having to look at other add-ons that connect and consolidate multiple businesses that use multiple accounting products, whether it's MYOB and another one, one of its rivals, for example. The other thing is that you can the restrictions on those reporting periods in the browser have been removed. As we know in the AccountRight product, you can run reports for 1 year in advance and 1 year behind. If you needed to do 2 years prior, you were restricted in that. In the browser, I can run reports from the year 2020, for example. That's 2 years ago. So the restrictions are vastly removed in the browser. So do we have any questions on that before we run over through to our top time-saving tips at all? Or everyone's okay? They haven't yet made the leap to jump into the browser and give it a go.
No questions as of yet. Oh, here we go.
No questions?
Donna wants to know, can you use both profiles?
Both profiles. In the browser, I believe you can, yes.
That is all for the moment.
Okay. Now, there is a warning about the browser. There are 4 areas that is being still beefed out. Multi-currency doesn't yet work in the browser, so that's why you probably stick with the AccountRight on your desktop still, and creating categories and assigning them to transactions. That's being worked on by MYOB at the moment. And if you're using different layouts for sales reports or anytime billings, that's yet to be beefed out in the browser. But look, guys, have a go, jump in. The browser will be the way that MYOB is going to push a lot of these new features. So jump in and have a look, get comfortable with it, and start getting a look and feel for it. When you're starting to use things like find and replace and the ABN validation, you're not going to go back. You're going to be living in the browser a lot more. Trust me on that.
Donna just has a quick question there, Yvonne. Can you use jobs in the browser?
You should be able to. That was one of the features I believe that MYOB had released. You'll need to just go in and double check that to make sure that it is available in your version, because it also depends on whether you're using the Pro, the Lite, or if you're using the AccountRight product in the browser.
Yep, that is it.
Okay. Let's get to the top 5 time-saving tips that everyone's been hanging out for, because that's what we're here for, right? We need something to get us through this end of financial year, and we need to get through it fast. The number one tip that I give people is activate and use bank feeds. It is a time saver. Instead of having to manually enter all those line by line entries on all your bank statements, waiting for the person that's got the access to the bank account in order to log in online and get that statement printed out, or perhaps you're still waiting for snail mail to deliver that bank statement, get bank feeds up and running. It downloads that information overnight, so while you're sleeping, it does that work for you. So when you come in the morning, the information is there. All you got to do is tell MYOB what to match it to, what to do with it. And that can be used on credit cards, loan accounts, and all your bank accounts, your savings accounts, your main checking accounts. It is an absolute time saver, and I would highly recommend everyone to start using it if you haven't used it already. The next one is automation. I know it's a big scary word right now, but use it. Automation is your friend in the finance industry. It assists you in saving a lot of time. We've got a lot of automation features within MYOB, as well as applications that bolt onto MYOB. And I highly recommend that you look into this if you haven't done it already. And that includes things like automating your accounts payable process, the data entry. We've got artificial intelligence that can read invoices and do half the data entry for us. Setting up rules where it automatically codes things for us. Automate, automate, automate. It will be a life changer for you. Another one is to use that in trade and go paperless. Paperless office at one point in time was a pipe dream. I know back in the 80s, 90s, and back in the 2000s, especially when I started working in the accounting industry, it was the dream. How to get there was anyone's guess. Now, with cloud accounting, using the in-tray with MYOB allows you to make major leaps towards paperless office. It allows you to scan and save all those invoices, or if you're receiving them via email, to drop and drag it into the browser version or into your AccountRight product. And not only that, in order to store it, but you can also attach it to the actual transaction. This is great for when your auditor or your accountant is in your file and they need to see that original invoice, rather than you having to rat through filing cabinets and go through weird filing systems that people have with the, is it T for telephone, T for Telstra, is it P for phone, O for Optus, where is it, where's that invoice, I need to go find it. Because it's attached electronically to your transaction, it's easy. It takes 2 seconds to open it up. Everyone gets the information straight away. It saves time, it saves paper, and it saves on storage because you don't have to then find somewhere to store this paperwork on-site or off-site. The other one is, if you're not using it, sign up and start using Automatic Super. The super clearinghouse that comes within MYOB and its payroll feature is a time saver. Instead of having to open up the separate portal over in one of your super funds, maybe you're using Hester or whatever it might be, and then retyping every single person's superannuation information, and then jumping into your internet banking, and then paying that super, doing the pay run. Registering it and using Automatic Super allows you to do all that process in a couple of clicks. For some organisations that we've set this up for, it has saved literally half a day's worth of work. So it depends on how many people you've got on your payroll. It can be an absolute game changer for you. And finally, using ABA files for bulk payments to your suppliers, as well as bulk payments to your payroll, to your employees. The ABA file is basically an instruction file that is sent, was downloaded out of your MYOB and then uploaded into your bank. So if you can imagine our larger organisations that are, I don't know, maybe you're paying 50 to 100 suppliers in one go, rather than typing in the payment instructions into the internet banking portal one by one, the ABA file allows you to do that in a couple of clicks. It works really well with our payroll, and it also allows for verification of that payroll process, as well as the supplier payment process. They're my top 5 tips. It might be some of them that you can get up and running by 30 June, but it also might mean that these might not be up and running yet, but you have got, or you will get them up and running come July, August and September, or at least starting the exploration on them. Now, I know that we're going a little bit over time, but as long as we don't have any questions over those top 5 tips, I might move into our wrap-up phase if that's okay, unless we've got some burning questions.
I've got a few questions, and time is fine if we go over a little bit. I think there's a lot to cover, so happy to go over a little bit longer. We've got Louise wants to know, can you recommend a good tutorial for learning how to use InTray?
Yes, so MYOB has their MYOB Academy. It's a free service that all MYOB users can sign up for. It's got some great little short videos. It's also got some instructions on there, written instructions, and it will go through step by step the process of how to use the InTray either in your AccountRight product or in the browser. So jump into there. It's for free. It's provided to all those users of MYOB.
Charmaine wants to know, would you love any links of information on going paperless?
So what was that?
Would love any links or information on going paperless?
There is a plethora. Just type in paperless office in your web browser and you will get bombarded with it. Look, paperless office is the ideal utopian situation, but it does need a little bit of preparation work. And sometimes it means changing the way that your organization does its day-to-day activities. I know that a lot of the guys that we have helped out, they used to get a lot of their invoices in the mail, by snail mail, and they were able to go through a process, and it took some time though with some of their suppliers to call them up and make sure that they're sending it via email. It also was in some cases with some of their suppliers necessary because the quantity of what they're getting is to have a bolt-on application that works with MYOB that manages a lot of the supplier invoices, and it does a lot of the heavy lifting with coding and automation and things like that. So paperless office, look, I'd say take it step by step. The first thing that we normally do is go through an audit and see what do you receive in paper, and how can we get rid of it? How can we then change the work habits either in your office or with the people that are sending the information to you to get off paper and into an electronic means? And then how do we feed that electronic means into MYOB?
Excellent. Steph would like to know, are there fees associated with the bank feeds and auto super functions within MYOB?
No. So bank feeds come as a built-in feature with MYOB. You don't pay extra for it, and that's the amazing part of it. So that's why as accountants and bookkeepers, we're always pushing people to turn those bank feeds on. It doesn't cost you any extra, but it provides you a lot of time saving. It saves you time, it saves you money, because your time is better spent elsewhere doing other activities rather than manually typing one by one all those bank statement line by line items.
And finally, we've got one from Dawn. Where can we learn about all the automated features in MYOB?
So MYOB keeps coming up with different automated features. Again, if you jump into the MYOB Academy or keep a lookout or subscribe to MYOB's newsletter, they normally come out with the information on what is new and great on their automation. But that's pretty much where it is. Or jump onto these sorts of webinars where we provide the information that's coming up on your product and what to look out for and how to use them. But basically, there's a lot of information out there. It just depends on what you'd like to subscribe to in order to keep yourself well informed.
And that's it for now.
Okay, fantastic. All right, now I do have to mention to everybody, it is a stressful time of year. 30 June, it's 30 days away, 29 if you don't count today. I know I'm not counting today, so it's 29 sleeps remaining until we can kiss June goodbye and kiss our end of financial year goodbye and say hello to the new financial year. But please, if you are finding that this period of time is absolutely stressful for you, remember to seek some assistance from internally from your organisation. But if your organisation is, say, one of those smaller organisations that doesn't have a HR officer that can assist you in this area, Gillespie's does partner with Lifeline Canberra, and we do like to remind people that if you do need assistance, Lifeline is there. 13 11 14 is their telephone number to seek assistance, and to just remember, keep calm. It's only financial year end. It's supposed to be a pleasant period of time. Don't be scared of it. It comes around every time this year. Repetitive all the time. If you make mistakes this year, don't worry. You're going to make the same mistakes each year. You're going to miss out on something, or you didn't have time, you ran out. Don't stress too much about it. You can pick it up next year and you can have a bigger and better end of financial year next year. But if you are struggling or if you need to seek help, Lifeline is there for you.
Okay. Has anyone got any questions for Yvonne before we wrap up today? We'll give people a few moments to send through any questions. But as I said at the start, I will put all this recording in a link with all the slides and a contact email for Gillespie Advisory, and I will send it out to you within the next few days as well. So plenty of help there, and everyone will, and Vaughn, including all our team there, will be able to help you with any more questions after, if you think of anything after the webinar. But other than that, I don't think we have any questions coming through. I think you probably got hit up the whole way through the webinar.
Usually the questions come when people start doing the activity and then they go, oh, I forgot to ask this question. Look, yes. If you do need assistance, give us a shout out. If you don't have an MYOB consultant or an accountant, or your auditors aren't able to help you, we do have our consulting services, and we can help you through that process. And we do help a lot of organisations around Australia, Sydney and Melbourne, over in regional Australia. I've got people down over in Bega. I've got Perth. I've got Northern Territory. In this day and age, we're all online. We're all connectable, yeah. And you are not alone.
Yeah. All right, well, we'll get that. We'll call that a wrap. But thank you so much for joining us today. I'm not a big accountant person, but a lot of stuff there I think was new to me. But
there's plenty. Plenty.
Hopefully we'll get the webinar up and running later on in the year anyway with you guys. Any more financial hacks or end of year reports, we'll go and get it on. Perfect. Thank you so much for joining us today, everyone.
All right, thank you very much, and enjoy your financial year end, and see you on the other side of it.
Bye-bye.
Okay, see you.